started falling, the snake started crawling. He must have give her a diamond ring. Adam said to Eve, you just won't wait till I get out of this garden gate. When Adam and Eve was in the Garden of Eden, they must have shook that thing.
Oxford dictionaries picked vape, smoking an e-cig, as word of the year and cited growing public debate on the public dangers and need for regulation. Translation, we don't know squat about vaping.
The battery-powered plastic device is liquid containing nicotine, masked by a rainbow of flavors.
E-cigs are tobaccoless. They are not subject to the same restrictions on TV as tobacco products, even though the vapor contains habit-forming nicotine.
Industry expected to outperform traditional tobacco within 10 years. While this is igniting worries that will pick up new addicts along the way, already we're seeing celebrities leading the craze.
What is an electronic cigarette?
An electronic cigarette is a safer alternative to smoking real cigarettes.
An electronic cigarette basically is, if you're smoking, it's the healthy alternative. It only, all it is a battery, and then you have an atomizer. It's based off of heat. There's no flame, so it's not smoke, it's not harmful.
To me, what an electronic cigarette is a way to get out of smoking. It's a way out.
An electronic cigarette is a device that heats up solution, aqueous water-based solution that contains nicotine and flavors and creates a mist that a person inhales.
It's not actually that simple though. There's so many different brands and types. And so there are types that don't heat a liquid, they heat like leaves, and there's types that don't have nicotine. So it gets a little bit dicey there.
So currently in the United States, there's over 450 devices which people use the term electronic cigarette to describe. Electronic cigarette really is sort of a catch-all term that describes a lot of variability. Inside of that big bucket, that big general term electronic cigarette, there are two basic types. There's a type of device that is used specifically to try and emulate the look, feel, characteristics of the cigarette. So these are sometimes referred to as cigalikes.
Cigalikes are the ones that you find that are available just about in every convenience store or gas station that sells cigarettes. They look alike to a cigarette. They're small. Generally, they're not rechargeable. Generally speaking, they're a one-time disposable use, but there are some versions of them that are rechargeable. They operate on an older technology that requires a cartomizer. Now, a cartomizer is a self-contained wick with a filament inside that heats it. And they're generally turned on automatically by drawing them. It'll switch the power on automatically. But they're very inconsistent, they don't hold a lot of liquid, and it's very difficult to gauge how much nicotine you're getting at any given time because the consistency is just not there with those devices, and that technology is actually really old and outdated.
And I should say that even within e-cigarettes, there's the first generation that are generally developed by big tobacco companies that have a huge budget for advertising, and that's like what you've seen, the Stephen Dorff blue e-cigs are. I think they're owned by a big tobacco company, and any of the ones you've seen on TV.
Tobacco roll, let me tell you now. Tobacco roll. Talking about a road, yeah. Tobacco roll, Lord. Talking about your road.
And then there are devices which are used really they have nothing to do with the look and feel of a cigarette.
Which are like mods. They kind of look like tanks.
It looks kind of like this in its simplest. There is a tank with a solution. There's a heating element in a battery that heats it up.
A mouthpiece that allow the user to use that aerosol on a more recreational basis. The degree to which each of those devices has the capacity to heat the solution, the degree to which the user has the capacity to alter what's in the solution, they're all very variable from device to device.
You can find a whole slew of, YouTube videos that are like tips on how to, make your own adjustments, like kind of tinker as if like the way people used to tinker with cars. They're tinkering with their e-cigarettes or whatever they call it. I mean, a lot of these brands don't even call themselves e-cigarettes either. They kind of try to steer clear of that.
The nickname for a device that's more advanced like this is called a mod. That's because it's modifiable. All right, so this is a regular vaporizer. It's got a dripping atomizer on it. So we'll break it down. It's got a couple of pieces. The mouthpiece is known as a drip tip. Most vaporizers have interchangeable drip tips. You can take them off. They all have about the same size, which is known as a 510 size. It has a cap that's removable, so you can see inside and see the coils and the wicks. Basically, you have a couple of circles of metal that are fused together through the building process. And there are terminals across here. The center one is a positive terminal. The two outer terminals are negative. Basically, the center post is shared by each coil. This is a dual coil build. So when I press the button, both coils are going to fire. The liquid is held inside of these wicks. These wicks are made out of organic Japanese cotton. So this piece could be just about anything. There's a whole bunch of different atomizers that can go on top of the main body, which this is called the mod. The mod breaks down. This particular mod has a top cap that's removable. So that comes off. It is threaded for the device that goes on top, whether it's a dripping atomizer or a tank atomizer. Inside, this battery is an 18650 battery, and this particular battery is 3.7 volts, 2500 milliamp hours, which is basically describes the amount of energy that it holds inside of it, or the battery life, and it has a 40 amp limit. Now, the main body here is just where the battery lives. It's the battery tube, and then you have a mechanical switch. This one in particular has a recessed button so that it can stand up without depressing the button. It has a copper contact in the center, and instead of a spring in this particular button, it's actually got opposing magnets, rare earth magnets. They have a 12-pound resistance, so the switch is rather difficult to push, so it can't inadvertently fire in your pocket. That's the basic breakdown of a mechanical device, and they're all different to some degree. They may have a different button, they may have a different look, they may be made out of different metals, but they all provide the same principle, which is they are a mechanical battery switch that will fire an atomizer on a 510 connection.
How did you first get involved in vaping?
Quitting smoking.
My background is an addiction, you know what I mean? I've been addicted to drugs since I've been 18 years old, and I have coming up on 4 years clean on November. You know what I mean? That's hard drugs. I used to do hard drugs. And guess what? Out of all those hard drugs, tobacco was the most impossible to quit. I put down everything. Anything that was possible that was hurting me, addicted to, I put it all down. Guess what I couldn't put down? I couldn't put down cigarettes. So what happened was even if a doctor would have came to me and said, Joey, you have cancer, you need to stop smoking, I would have laughed at him and went outside and smoked a cigarette.
I smoked about 2 packs of cigarettes a day, and it was costing me like $22. Lucky Strikes, real highway to death type stuff.
I couldn't watch a whole movie without like, pause, I gotta go out and smoke a cigarette. I couldn't get mad without smoking a cigarette. There's really not much that I could do without smoking a cigarette.
I used to get winded walking up a flight of stairs. I go to BCC and I would walk up a flight of stairs and be like, every morning I would cough up black tar.
I didn't think I was going to be able to quit.
No, she didn't.
I have tried everything. I've tried the gum. inhalers, patches, medication as far as Wellbutrin, Wellbuterol, Xanax. I tried the blue cigarette, one of the first electronic cigarettes I'd ever seen. Nothing worked. And then back in June, my son started to vape, and my boyfriend started to vape.
I went to a shop and I bought one of those cigarette things that looks like a cigarette from Rite Aid or whatever, and they weren't getting the job done. And a buddy of mine showed up at my house with this this device. It was like a pen with a tank on the end of it, and he was blowing a cloud with it, and he had quit smoking with it, and I couldn't believe it. So I went immediately the next day and bought one of those.
I was very skeptical. I honestly did not think this was gonna work.
She said that
and I was willing to give it a try. And after, I would say 3 days, I threw a full pack of cigarettes out, and I was a pack and a half smoker a day. And I haven't smoked since. Like, I have not relapsed, I haven't had one. I strictly vape.
I walked in here a year ago. I had no idea what I was doing. I had a wad full of cash, and I just kind of said, you know what? I don't want to smoke cigarettes anymore. Help me. And they did. They got me hooked up. I bought my juice here, and I haven't touched a cigarette in a year and a half.
I've been vaping for about 8 months now, and I've been fully cigarette-free for 6 months with no looking back. That means that when people smoke a cigarette around me, I have no want to do it.
Yeah, I've been smoke-free for over 2.5 years now.
Congratulations, man.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Thanks.
Good job. Do you see a culture building around these things?
Yeah, I'd say there is a sort of cultural identity, particularly among young adults, I'd say, where the use of the reservoir systems, the recreational use of e-cigarette juice has taken on a much more of a cultural significance than the cigalikes really have.
I've met and been able to become friends with so many different types of people as a result of getting into this.
There definitely is. I mean, I'm in Facebook groups. I've driven out to West Deptford to meet up with people and just talk shit and buy stuff off of them. They buy stuff off of me.
Small numbers of vapors, when they run into each other, it's kind of like Jeep people or people that drive Volkswagens. They give each other the wave because they're driving something a little bit different. Now, with vapors, it's the same thing. When you run into a fellow vapor, you walk over, ask them what kind of flavor they're using, check out their device, they check out your device, you swap information, like just have a conversation, and it opens up a whole kind of like family thing.
I mean, it's just, we all meet up, we all kind of, I don't want to say we're family, but we all know each other, we all talk to each other. You don't ever just bullshit.
So people who wouldn't normally mix, people who wouldn't normally run into each other in daily life or be out on the street together, whether it's the 80-year-old woman at our taste bar tasting juices because she quit smoking after smoking for 50 years. She's talking to the young guy with the gauges in his ears, and they're having a conversation about vaping. Now, these two people wouldn't normally mix out on the street. They might not even hold the door for each other at a Wawa or a 7-Eleven, but in an environment like this, they're basically survivors of the same ship that's going down to the bottom of the ocean, so they have something in common, and they have common ground to meet on. So I think it's pretty cool when you see people that wouldn't normally mix in a shop like this just getting along and having something in common.
I feel like people quit using cigarettes, traditional tobacco cigarettes, through electronic cigarettes and vaping, and what they find is a huge subculture, and they turn it into a hobby and a part of a lifestyle, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
I think it's completely popping, blowing up everywhere.
It's definitely a fad. Like, there are, like, people are like, well, we'll say, oh, are you a current smoker? And they'll be like, oh, no, but my friends, like, you know, it's just, it's being one of those things, and it's just such a big revolution almost. Like, everyone just wants to be a part of it, learn about it. You know, when you get on, like, the dripping end, people turn it into a hobby.
You get into the hobby side of it, and it's just, you know, it's a constructive thing.
You learn
to
something
do,
new
you know?
every day.
You're working with your hands, very constructive hobby to keep with your mind and keep healthy.
The majority of cultural significance exists inside of these reservoir devices. The reason being, because the reservoir devices are usually a little more expensive. They usually require some interaction with a shop or shop owner. There's a lot more possibility in terms of flavoring, and so the opportunity to try a little of this or try a little of that or share some of your experience with a friend also exists.
Could you sort of like walk me through your taste bar a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, so this is where a customer would come in and be able to taste all the flavors. Basically, you would sit down. You're given a sterile, clean tasting tip. We keep all the liquids ready to go in tanks. They're cleaned a few times a day just to make sure that everything's nice and sterile. And then you can sit down. Whether you have a beginner vaporizer where you're just using tanks and things like that, then you would get, you'd say, I want to sample whatever liquid, just you name it. What is this one here? Blue Bear. So this is basically, I have no idea what this flavor is. I never tried it. But basically you'd have to taste this Blue Bear, and we would stick it on a pen for you. So if you sat down and you have a general idea of what flavor profile you're looking for and you're experienced, somebody like Ryan or myself or Sal or anybody that works here can guide you through it. You can say, well, I like dessert flavors, and we can start tossing out dessert flavors to you, and you can get to taste as many as you want until you find one that you like. Or you can be handed a menu. A lot of places have something like this here, which is a menu that's usually going to be categorized by manufacturer because the manufacturer prefers it that way. They don't want to have it done by profile. So you could flip through it and say, oh, I heard of this company before, this Cutwood company. They're awesome. Let me try unicorn milk. And then I'd say social media really drives it as well, because when you have different groups and different, with different hashtags and stuff like that and the things that people follow, it develops into groups, into a society, and it's a phenomenon, really. If you on Instagram and you look up anything vaping, it's really overwhelming how much stuff is out there and how many people relate to each other and find each other that way. This is my buddy Al. He's in Southern California. He started a movement called Mod Men. I met him through Instagram. I got the opportunity to go out to California because we developed some products out here on the East Coast we were trying to get a distributor for. And when I got out there, I was greeted by all kinds of awesome people. I made a lot of really good, long-lasting friendships out of that trip. And this is his company, so he has a hashtag, ModMen. He's got his own Instagram page, and he's got, I don't even know, 40,000 followers that check out what he's doing on a daily basis and what products that he's into, and tons of endorsements and things like that. So
it's involving music. It's involving having fun with people that have a similar interest as you. You kind of get involved with the niches. There's a few different niches to vaping. You got the builders, got the cloud chasers, and you got the people that do the vape tricks. So it's like electronic cigarettes is just such a broad term for what we're doing here tonight. You know what I mean?
So explain each of those.
All right, people that would do a cloud chasing, that would be what you're at tonight, a cloud chasing competition. It's basically people that like to blow the biggest clouds. They turn it into kind of a hobby, into a sport, Okay.
1, 2, 3, purge. 1, 2, 3, vape.
Left.
Me?
What's your biggest, what kind of build you have, you get to kind of customize what you're using, mech mods, and it's about basically competing who blows the biggest cloud. Then you have people that build, and they build coils. And you can do some more research on that, but what it is people start doing crazy builds, twisteds, parallels, Clapton coils, and it's like an art form. You can check out stuff on Instagram. People are getting 10,000 likes on a picture of somebody's coils. You know what I mean? So then you have the people that do vape tricks. They'll blow smoke rings, jellyfish. I don't want to call them smoke rings, but rings. They'll blow jellyfish. They'll do the doubles. There's a lot of different. It's just niches to it. There's some, you can kind of find. And then there's people that just vape for fun. That just, I'll have a tank, and they love vaping, so they engross themselves into the culture. My girlfriend, she vapes, but she doesn't do any of those. But loves going to competitions. She likes surrounding herself by people, and usually, the culture of vaping is usually a pretty positive. Right. The community of vaping is the most positive community that I've been exposed to.
Opened on my opening month alone 4 other shops, local, like within 20 miles, opened too. The same month I opened. So to me, I was like, that's awesome, because now people at least know what vapor is.
Well, honestly, me personally, I like supporting other vape shops, because if we hate each other, it's not going to go anywhere. Because one day we're going to have to come together and, fight, the FDA and all that stuff to try and get where you can vape indoors, or you can vape on the sidewalk without anyone giving you a hassle about it,
Yeah, I mean, we're all in it to help everybody, so it should just be a tight, growing community of people looking out for each other.
You know what I mean? People are usually trustworthy. They mean what they say, and they treat you. Everybody's respected, and that's really what brought me to it.
Vape on.
So one of your areas of expertise is studying smoking cessation. Do you think these have a place in smoking cessation?
I think they will have a place in the treatment of tobacco dependence. I don't think they're there yet.
Well, you can't really discuss vaping and tobacco harm reduction in the same sentence because the FDA hasn't approved vaping for this purpose, and it hasn't approved any of the e-liquids as a form of tobacco harm reduction.
So first of all, e-cigarettes, technically, like a lot of them aren't like true blue tobacco products because they don't have a lot of tobacco. They deliver nicotine without the tobacco, which is why arguably they're healthier for you because it's the tobacco that has the carcinogens that cause cancer. Now, the FDA has the right to regulate tobacco products. And so the e-cigarette crew, I think there's an argument that they're not technically a tobacco product. And so the only way that they can regulate it under those rules is if the e-cigarette companies claim to be a smoking cessation aid. So if you watch any ads that you see or promotions that you see for e-cigarettes, you will never see them explicitly claim to be a smoking cessation aid because then they fall under the regulation of the FDA.
You know, if you want to understand kind of the culture of science, there's a subset of scientific culture that has to do with sort of biomedical scientific culture. In that culture, we're very, very particular about claims that we can make and what we're willing to give people in pursuit of therapeutic goals. In the field, the comparison may be, in people's minds, may be, is it a cigarette or is it an e-cigarette? But as soon as that translates into a clinical environment, comparison's no longer about, should it be about a cigarette or should it be about an e-cigarette? The comparison has to be, is there value to the e-cigarette compared to other established treatments to help people stop smoking? That's a big difference in comparator. That's a big difference in point of view. In that sense, e-cigarettes really have not made the grade yet in terms of our ability to reliably say that if I apply this technology to a large group of people, that I should have the expectation that some portion of that group of people will stop smoking.
If we're being honest with ourselves intellectually, coming from a guy that smoked for 24 years and tried every single tobacco harm reduction therapy on the market, I was never able to quit smoking, entirely until this came along.
Right now, the reason that they haven't made the grade has everything to do with the user defined variables, how often, how much, which ones they pick, which ones they use, that sort of thing. And I think it has everything to do with I believe, really rudimentary understanding that we have about the overlap between behavior, social construct, environmental cues, triggers, and the biology, how those things actually fit together. I think we have a sketchy understanding of. And so we're not really prepared to maximize the utility of the e-cigarette as a tool in getting at that place.
Can you break down the typical ingredients that are in e-juice or e-liquid, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah. The main constituent is water. Beyond that, there is glycerin and propylene glycol. These are the chemicals that are, when heated, they make little droplets that create this visible mist that floats about. It's the same stuff that is used in theatrical fogs, at rock concerts, and at movie sets, in theaters. They're also the ones who trap flavors and other ingredients in a liquid and deliver it to the lungs of vapor. And the other ingredients are nicotine. I mean, not all e-cigs contain nicotine, but there are also flavorings. You know, there's lots of flavors out there.
Oh God. Mother's milk, unicorn milk, nuts.
Purgatory from Duality, that's another good one. We have
Blue Raspberry Jolly Rancher from the Hard Candy Top Line exclusive line.
Yes, that's a good one. There's so many.
Alien Piss.
Those are Fruit Loops, but there's, I don't know, there's cherry, there's Death by Toucan, there's Blue Death, which is like kind of like a Sprite flavor, there's gummy bears, there's sour gummy worms, there's every dessert, cinnamon buns, anything.
I make them. I've got like 300 right off the top of my head. Death by Toucan, Blue Death, Green Death, Cherry.
Cherry, strawberry. I think I've seen banana before. I think I've seen mint before. I think I've seen pina colada. I think I've seen
The Tempest Tides, Death by Toucan, Serial Killer.
some kind that's designed to look like a gummy candy. There's chocolate. There's a lot that mimic regular desserts.
Yeah, Mother's Milk, Sucker Punch, Punky Brewster.
Gum flavor, pineapple, mango, fruit flavor. I've seen wine flavor. Within the wine flavor group, there's white wine, there's Merlot, there's lots of different specific flavors around wine.
It's crazy death.
Raspberries, custard.
Raspberries, custard.
Candies, chocolates,
the good
coffees.
stuff. Peaches and cream, strawberry cheesecake,
peach champagne,
shakedown.
I've seen chocolate flavor.
E-Liquid's entire juice line.
HK, definitely my favorite. That is my favorite.
Jostleberry.
Jostleberry,
Can't
another
forget Jostleberry.
Root beers.
Root beer float. Banana, cream cheesecake or something.
The Illuminati.
Illuminati.
The pineapple.
There's too many.
Strawberry blonde and blue nuts.
There's so many. We could go on for days.
So many juice companies. I think we're over 10,000 juice companies or e-liquid companies in the United States at this point. Some of them are full-on, full-fledged real businesses, and some of them are just people selling liquid on the internet or on Craigslist or on Facebook. But you're going to run out of names eventually. You're going to have to come up with something.
So what exactly was your study? How was it conducted, and what did it find?
Right. The aim of the study was to look at all available information on the chemistry and emissions from electronic cigarettes. And it consisted of me searching for the reports published in peer-reviewed journals and held by private companies or labs, whoever had them, that evaluated electronic cigarette chemistry, both what was in the typical liquids sold in the market, as well as any tests of emissions. And the way the test of emissions would be conducted is they would stick this little device into a machine that would imitate smoking. Same machines that we use to test cigarettes for toxicity. It would puff, and the air would be generated containing mist that comes out of electronic cigarette. And some chemistry would be done on those emissions. So what I did is I collected all the information about chemistry and emissions from e-cigs that was available at the time that we did the work. And then I did a very simple calculation which imagines that everything that is in e-cig is emitted into the air that a person breathes. It's sort of imitating vaping, right? Let's imagine that sort of typical amount of liquid that a person would vape enters their breathing zone. We know the chemistry of a source material, which means that we know the chemistry of what is in the air, and then I could calculate the quantity, how intense the exposure was that came about. This is exactly what industrial hygienists do when they're faced with a new process in the workplace, where they're trying to determine whether there's potential for harm. The beauty of that calculation is that A, it gives us a number that can be compared to workplace health and safety standards. So we know if those standards are exceeded, we have something to worry about. B, it makes this really worst case assumption scenario, right? It's an extreme situation where we assume maximum contamination of the air. So we're erring on the side of caution when we do the calculation. I was very, very surprised by what I found. I was also a little bit disappointed, because very often when you go into these projects, you're so gung-ho to find something that is dangerous. And that's how we're trained in my field. We're out there, we're hunting for something that is hazardous. And I couldn't find anything to pin the tail on that donkey. Like, none of the calculations that I did revealed anything that was of particular concern. Zero risk of cancer beyond background, and nothing about any other grave health effects that people are concerned about generally. Nothing of that nature came out.
Now it's just, I can feel better, I run miles, I can walk up steps, it feels amazing compared to smoking my Lucky Strike.
Do you think that there is any sort of risk coming along with this?
There's definitely a risk when a bunch of people start mixing things thoughtlessly without any quality control. And in fact, one of recommendations come out of my work is to routinely test what people mix and create some more stringent guidelines and safety procedures. But yeah, there's a concern about people mixing things that they don't understand without any stringent quality control. That is a concern.
How do you feel about the fact that there isn't a whole lot of regulation and all of that jazz?
Good. I don't like regulate. I mean, I use certain regulated things, but I'm kind of happy that it's not regulated yet. Just because if you start regulating things the second they start getting popular, then the popularity will drop off. I mean, some people just like it because it's not regulated by government officials and stuff like that. So I think that if you're going to regulate vaping, it shouldn't be until it at least triples what it is now. Because once you start regulating things like juice and stuff that you're making, then you give the people who are at their house making juice, oh, well, you have to have a license for that now. I mean, I have juice someone made at their house in my pocket. It's delicious. But if you regulated vaping, I wouldn't have it.
Like, the truth is that right now it's a free-for-all. We can pretty much do whatever we want, and although it's good financially for a lot of businesses, it's not necessarily the best thing for the people. Just being the fact, like, I'm a consumer as well as a shop owner. So as a consumer, I'm like, hey, give me whatever I want. But as a shop owner, when I watch, like, mistakes happen regularly and things, people come in my shop and they'll ask for things that they just, in my head, I'm like, that shouldn't be right. You know what I mean? Like, they shouldn't even want that or think that that's normal. So the regulations actually do need to be imposed.
From a doctor's perspective, there's absolutely no excuse to put something into people's bodies that we don't know what it does or what it is. There is no excuse for that. You're delivering an aerosol of organic chemicals to the lungs. It's not even just the lungs that are at risk, but the lungs, at every moment in time, your lungs contain exactly 1/2 of your blood volume. And that blood volume, that entire blood volume, is about 3 micrometers away from the air. The lungs' job is to move stuff from the outside world to the inside world. And so if we're really good at delivering chemical to the lungs, we better be good at knowing exactly what the effect of that chemical is on the rest of the body. We need to understand that. If we don't, the potential for harm is so high, it's incalculable compared to the potential for benefit. Here is where the general population would be comparing the e-cigarette to the cigarette. But from a doctor's point of view, that's absolutely the wrong comparator. The comparator has to be, what is the impact of the e-cigarette either to nothing, or what is the impact of the cigarette at a minimum? What's the impact of the e-cigarette to other alternatives to cigarette smoke? The biggest immediate concern is actually the relative accessibility of the constituents of e-cigarettes to children.
The concern also is, some of the open systems can be a bit finicky to operate. So if they're not very well put together, there is a risk of spills. If e-liquids are sold in these little bottles with droplets. When you have a solution of nicotine and other things that may contain flavors or things that should not get into your salad necessarily, you would perhaps want to regulate how those are delivered and stored, perhaps to the level that how we regulate pharmaceuticals, so that, they have safety caps and all that.
The short-term impact of e-cigarette aerosol on the lung is of less concern to me as a doctor than what the long-term impact is of short, small, little exposures. For example, I'll give you an idea. The stuff that looks like smoke is a chemical called propylene glycol. And the majority of e-cigarettes use propylene glycol to create that visual effect. Propylene glycol is absorbable. So if you get enough of it in the airway and in the digestive tract, you'll absorb it. And it all goes to the liver, and the liver tries to metabolize it. When the liver tries to metabolize it, it produces a set of chemicals called aldehydes. You're familiar with formaldehyde. Formaldehyde is one of the aldehydes that is a potential metabolic product of propylene glycol. Now we know that if I were to take you and expose you to a large dose of propylene glycol acutely, that would be bad for you. That I can expect you to have some liver toxicity because of that. I might expect you to have heart toxicity because of that. I might expect you to actually have accumulation of those aldehydes in your retina. What we don't know is whether or not those observations of large dose exposures translate directly to small but prolonged sort of micro exposures over a long period of time. We don't know if that's the same problem. That's where science actually is exceedingly important in protecting us from the impositions of assumptions.
Have you ever had an experience of a defect in one of your electronic cigarettes?
Yes, with the Logics actually. I went to 7-Eleven one day to buy another battery. About a few weeks later, maybe a couple months, I was smoking it. I remember it stopped working for some reason, right? Well, I just put it down in my pocket. I remember I was wearing sweatpants. So I put it away in my sweatpants pocket. And I remember about like 5 minutes later afterwards, I felt a burning like in my pants, like if someone like put like a hot handle of a pot like just right on my thigh. And I go inside my pockets to reach reach what it was with the pain. I realized it was the e-cigarette. It was just like really hot. I actually had to pull out the e-cigarette with the pocket because it was too hot to hold with my hands for more than a couple seconds. Grab the rest of it with like the cloth of my shirt and had to throw it out.
I mean, just recently actually there was another red flag that came up. The CDC actually just published a report that says if they interviewed middle and high school kids, and it turns out that for the first time really, kids in that age group are using the electronic form of the cigarette at higher rates than they're using traditional cigarettes.
I grew up in prefabricated shack. When I went to high school, they pulled the clothes off my back. Load above knows how much I love this mean old place called Tobacco Road. Yes. Tobacco Road, let me tell you now, Tobacco Road. Talking about a road.
So there are a number of instances of tobacco company documents from dating back to the 60s and 70s actually, where the industry recognized that the adolescent brain was, during its period of rapid development in adolescence, was most susceptible to the modifications that nicotine would cause. So remember before we talked about that room full of 100 people? Mm-hmm. If all 100 of those people were actually between, say, 10 and 15, instead of only 30 people becoming addicted, we might actually be able to achieve 50 or 60% of those people becoming addicted, because the brain is really most susceptible to change during periods of rapid development. So there was a lot of sort of documentary, is that a real word? Documented evidence that they knew that there was a period of highest susceptibility, and they wanted to get to young people 14, 15, 16, well before the legal age of smoking. They wanted to entice them to experiment.
So how do you think these companies today, such as say Blue or Finn or any of these mega companies that are advertising on TV because they have the budgets to, how do you think they are trying to appeal to youth?
If you look at the trajectory of tobacco advertising, the methods that people used and the development of those methods over time, the trajectory is almost exactly the same. Ads that used representations of young adults having sexualized kinds of encounters, romantic encounters.
Like if anything, they have celebrities or glamorous people.
Now I do the electronic cigarette.
I've never heard of this, never seen this, don't know what that is.
Got a bejeweled bottom.
Hey, wait a minute. What was that?
Bet I'm freaking y'all out
wait a
right
minute.
now, huh? Am I going to get arrested by the PC police?
Wait a minute. What was that?
It's water vapor. I'm
Really?
essentially humidifying the space.
Hey, I'm Jenny McCarthy. Now when I go to public places that don't allow smoking, I can whip out my blue and know that I won't scare any guys away.
You know, the other thing is direct advertising. In the 90s, there were an awful lot of giveaways, packaging cigarettes in small units, 1 or 2 cigarettes at a time, giving cigarettes away at sporting events or music concerts. The idea there was that it was illegal to give a cigarette to somebody who was less than 18 years of age. But if you handed it out to enough people, eventually kids in the crowd would actually get at it.
And then Enjoy paid hunky young men, naked except for some red gym shorts, to pass out free samples of these. That's not how you market e-cigarettes to smokers to help them quit. That's how you market them to teenage girls.
Clearly, there has to be some scrutiny of this. Big Tobacco has avoided scrutiny, and that's a concern. I don't trust them at all. Nobody trusts them. Nobody should trust them. Their profit motive is their only motive.
Think about this. Do you really believe that R.J. Reynolds and Philip Morris and Laura Lard want to help smokers quit?
In addition to the like classic, print advertising and television advertising, they also do a lot of like concert promotions, which are like musicians that are not necessarily like, they're attracting teenagers.
I think this tour is sort of an awesome moment for our band. Freedom Project Tour is a tour that we are headlining with Balance and Composure, Kevin Devine, and the Goddamn Band, presented by Blue E-Cigs. It's going to be an awesome tour. Seriously, it's with some of our best friends. We can't wait to do it. We can't wait to see you guys out there.
But what my research is looking at with the advertising, or the one that we most recently published, has to do more with the smoking cues. So we were interested in e-cigarettes because they look so similar, or the ones that are created by the big tobacco products are called their first generation e-cigarettes, or cig-alike. And so we just wanted to know if putting these back, the reason they were banned from the airwaves, advertisements were banned from the airwaves, was because it's effective and makes people want to smoke. So what about this product that looks just like cigarettes? Is that going to generate the urge to smoke a tobacco cigarette? And so that's what we tested, and the short answer was yes, for daily smokers it did, and for former smokers it made them less confident in their ability to abstain from a tobacco cigarette. So not an e-cigarette, but like an actual combustible cigarette. I think it would be very, very naive to assume that these big tobacco companies that own a lot of these e-cigarette companies that advertise on TV don't know that very well. So there's the research there that shows that the mod style e-cigarettes are much more effective at delivering nicotine, and yet the big tobacco companies are all developing the first generation, smaller ones that are less effective at delivering nicotine.
Everyone I know that has a cig-alike or like one of them blue Enjoy, stuff like that, they're still smoking cigarettes. Why try and quit and not quit?
So is that because they know that people will have to buy more to get, you know, their dose of nicotine, or is it because they know it looks like it and it kind of keeps smoking in the back of your mind?
I think they're pointless. I tried them before I stopped smoking cigarettes, and all it did was sit in my pocket next to my pack of cigarettes. I mean, it does nothing for you. The nicotine in it is barely like in your bloodstream. So at least when you vape, you get you get the nicotine that you have from your juice.
Any concluding remarks on e-cigs, vapes, your attitude, your feeling, all of it?
If you want to smoke your cigarettes, that's fine. But if you're looking for something to quit smoking, don't go buy a Blue or an Enjoy or something like that. No. Find a vape shop around where you live and just ask them what they think is good for you. I mean, you'll get your nicotine, you won't have a withdrawal. I had no withdrawal through the entire experience, and it works. Everyone who says it doesn't is lying to you. It works. If I can quit, anyone can quit.
Reviews on electronic cigarettes is whenever you face something new in life, I find it helpful to keep an open mind and analyze it. If you have some initial gut reaction about the device, for example, it looks like a cigarette, which reminds you of smoking, or wow, this is wonderful, this is going to save the world. It's good to have that initial reaction, but it's also good to write it down and not act on it. But fundamentally, treat people with respect. Don't harp on them, don't lecture them. Nobody likes being lectured. I'm paid to lecture, and I know people don't like being lectured too. As far as e-cigs go, I think they're probably the most important, in my opinion, development in public health in recent times that can actually help a lot of people get away from smoking and have a safe source of nicotine that does not harm their health.
Don't be afraid. I mean,
don't be afraid. Keep
don't
an
be
open
afraid.
mind.
Open mind. Everyone's different.
Educate yourself.
Educate. You learn something new every day when it comes to this stuff. There's really, I don't think there's ever a day that goes by where I don't learn something new, or I don't find out a different fact about vaping, or
It turned something into quitting cigarettes into something that people can enjoy and get together. And anything that's a subculture is when people could hang out together, listen to music, and do the same thing. That's all. Graffiti artists, they're a subculture. People that spin on boxes and do break dancing, that's a subculture. Hip hop music, rock music is all subculture. All those cats have a similar interest. They get together, they do the same thing. You know what I mean? And I think that when you say vape is a subculture, it ties together so many different people, but they're all enjoying one similar interest. You know what I mean? I do music. I do hip hop music. I've sold more CDs that had more support through the vape community than I would have ever just not vaping. And that's because everybody's supportive, man. Because if somebody said, yo, man, buy my CD, I'd be like, yo, you're out here competing, I'm going to buy your CD, dog. You know what I mean? And that's what makes a subculture to me. It's like support, community. It's not even the term subculture is okay, but the vape community, that's a better, that's a better way to explain it, you know what I mean?
I think the biggest message about e-cigarettes is actually not to the consumer of e-cigarettes. The most impactful message about e-cigarettes is actually to people like me. I think the lessons that need to be learned about e-cigarettes revolve around the rationale for using them. Why do people elect to use them? What do we need to understand about decision making? What do we need to understand about consumer choice? What do we need to understand about what is attractive to a young male that I'm having trouble relating to? Why can't I be better at making my message relatable to someone who would otherwise resonate easily with an e-cigarette message? All of that, I think, is a very fertile area where we need to understand. I would say if I had a room full of doctors, I would tell them to keep your eyes and ears open. Ask questions of people who use the e-cigarette. Ask them why they use it. What's it mean to them? What are they trying to accomplish? What are they getting at? What are the social and cultural factors that drove them to toward that decision and away from the decision that I would rather they have made? And learn from that. To me, that's the main message. If I had to sort of counsel sort of the individual user around it, I would say, well, to tell you the truth, I can't really tell you the truth. I don't have enough data to be able to say with any degree of certainty that this is good or bad. If it's good for you, I support your decision, I'll work with you. But if you're just thinking about it, if you're looking for a definitive answer, that doesn't exist yet.
Can you do me one favor? Look directly into the camera, like right now. Say the end.
The end.
Smoke.